This is Poulet Saute Marengo, a delicious sauté of chicken with fluted mushrooms, shrimps, and French fried eggs. It was invented on the battlefield after Napoleon's victory at Marengo. We're doing Napoleon's chicken today on the French Chef.
The French Chef is made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation.
Welcome to the French Chef. I'm Julia Child. You know, many famous events gave rise to famous dishes like pêche melba and beef Wellington. And we have here Poulet Marengo. And this was after the Battle of Marengo, which lasted from dawn to dusk. Napoleon was very hungry indeed, and he said, "Chef, let's eat." And all the chef had were some tomatoes and a few eggs and some mushrooms and a chicken. And he cut up the chicken with his trusty saber, and he combined everything together, and it turned out to be one of the most famous chicken dishes. And the Battle of Marengo was June 14th, 1800. And today, many years later, we are celebrating not the battle, but the chef and his recipe. And I'm sure he cut up his chicken better than I with grandfather's sword. And I'll put this chicken away and the sword away. And we're going to get to work on the dish itself. This is a combination of the chicken, and then it is sautéed, and then you have tomatoes, and you have mushrooms, fluted mushroom caps, and you have a very interesting addition, which is French fried eggs. And so we're going to get to the chicken right away, and that everything in this recipe gets cooked in olive oil, because that was all the chef had. So you film a nice frying pan or chicken fryer with olive oil, and then in goes the chicken. And the chicken is all, when you're going to saute the chicken, be sure that you have dried it well. And for this recipe, we have the advantage over Napoleon's chef, because we're using all legs and drumsticks, like that. So I think we are going to have a better dish, really. And this is in my supermarket where I got these. These had been really disjointed. There's your second joint, but it doesn't have the piece of back on, which is very nice, so it makes a neat eating piece. And you cut it in half, and then there's a little bone there, which is good to remove. The second joint is called, that's the second joint, or thigh. As you see, with that little bone removed, it makes a much nicer piece of chicken. And with the drumstick, you can do the same thing. You can cut off this little bone. And that makes it lie flatter, and it will brown better. And you can save all of these little pieces and use them for a stock. And I'll do one more so you'll see how it works. There you have your thigh or second joint. Wiggle it back and forth and just cut between the joints. You see the ball joint here. Pop it off. Do the same with the ball joint on your drumstick. And then that's the French way of cutting up chicken for sauté, and I think it's a very good one. Now I want to see how this chicken is doing. It should brown on each side. And it takes several minutes, I should say 2 or 3 anyway, to brown nicely. And you turn it over. Let it brown nicely on the other side. This kind of a pan with the high sides is called a chicken fryer, and I think they're very nice. I've got me heat on high. It splatters a bit, but it browns better. See how that's browning. That's gonna, I should see with the saute, you want to have it nicely browned and stiffen. And then after that, it's going to cook covered. But if you don't cook it long enough until it stiffens, too much of the juices come out of it. So take your time over it, but stay right over it so nothing's going to happen to it. And then when you've got it all brown, you flame it with cognac. This wouldn't, of course, be Napoleon's brandy, because that would be too young for him then. Stand well away. And let the flames rise for several minutes. The reason you burn it is to burn off the alcohol. Shaking it around. Then when you think that you've flamed it enough, you just cover the pan. And that stops the flames. I'll wipe off a little bit of this. And now we have some chopped onions in. And the reason they go in now and not while the chicken is browning, that's about half a cup, is because you don't want the onions to brown. You just want to let them cook slowly and give out their flavor, but you don't want them to get all brown. And then we'll have some salt and pepper, probably about 1/4 teaspoon of salt and several nice grindings of pepper. That already smells very nice, just because, I guess, onions and cognac. And a little herbs, and I think because this was done in Italy, the Battle of Marengo was in northern Italy. Marengo's about 50 miles northwest of Genoa. I'm putting in Italian seasoning, which I think would be the proper thing to do. And then this pan gets covered, and it's to cook very slowly for about 10 to 12 minutes on one side and then 10 to 12 minutes on the other until it's done. I mean, until it's tender, and then it gets mixed up with the sauce. Now I'm just going to clean up a little bit here. And we have to set some of these things ready for the next steps. And we're going to get now ready the garnishing. And the garnishing can be done while the chicken is cooking. As you see, because Napoleon was so hungry, you're not going to have a terribly elaborate dish, but it's going to be very good and unusual. And we have to have the tomatoes, and the tomatoes have to be peeled, so drop them for 10 seconds in boiling water or turn them over a gas flame to loosen the peel. Then it's to be cut in half. I should have a little cutting board here. Then this is going to be the familiar tomato peeled, seeded, juiced. Now, there, it's cut in half, and you squeeze out the seeds. You don't want the seeds to be in the cooked tomato, because in the cooked tomato dish, because they get hard. And they don't look nice. You can't have anything that doesn't look nice when you're feeding an emperor. And then chop them roughly. You should have about a cup or a cup and a half or 2 cups of fresh tomatoes. And if your tomatoes aren't nice and fresh and tasty and in season, you can add a little bit of drained canned tomato. There, and I'm going to put those in a jar. And this in French is called tomate concassée, C-O-N-C-A-S-S-E, which just means tomatoes peeled, seeded, juiced, and roughly chopped. So those are all ready, and I'm going to put those over there. And we have then the rest of the garniture. And we have, let's see, we have, of course, garlic, and then there are mushrooms, and we have some nice, great big mushrooms. And holding the mushroom in your hand, take the stems off, and then chop the stems, and the stems will go into the sauce. Rather roughly. I suppose he probably used his saber for this. Now the next thing we're going to see, I just wonder if the chef did use his saber for. He might have. He'd be a smarter cook than I am, certainly, if he did. And now we have fluted mushroom caps. And I'm going to show you how to do this, because it's a nice trick if you can do it, and you can do it if you just practice it. There it is. See, it has little striations running down, and to do it, you take a nice mushroom cap, holding it in one hand, and then take a very sharp little knife, and there's your thumb. Rest the thumb on the mushroom cap, and your other thumb is on top, and you turn the mushroom against the knife. And this is the kind of thing you can't quite believe it until you begin doing it, but it works. See, my left, this hand is turning like that, and the knife is held quite steadily, and it's the mushroom cap that is cutting itself against the knife. So I think when you want to learn it, the thing to do is every time you're going to use mushrooms at all, flute them all, and eventually you just suddenly get the idea of how it works. Now I'll do another one fast. I learned to do this because that famous cook Dione Lucas, who was, I think, the mother of French cooking in the United States, is a whiz at mushroom turning, and I just said, well, if she can do it, so can I. I think she does it much neater than I do, but see that when once you get onto it, it goes quite fast, and then you can use the mushroom peelings for the rest of your sauce. Now we're going to cook some croutons, because things have to sit on croutons on the serving platter. And croutons are little triangles of bread, usually sautéed in clarified butter, but because of this dish, they're sautéed in olive oil, and they're delicious sautéed in olive oil. I'm using a very nice French olive oil, and I think if you want to find a good one, you just have to test them out. Then these get cut into triangles and into the pan, and you want enough oil in the pan so that the pieces of bread won't burn. And you don't want to crowd them. And then the next thing we're going to saute are shrimp. Of course, in the original recipe, according to what they say, it was not shrimp, but écrevisses. And écrevisses are little tiny freshwater lobster-like things, about 3 or 4 inches long. And they're perfectly lovely, and they're red, and they're very pretty. But you can get them in this country, but where I happen to live, we don't seem to have any fresh écrevisses, so I'm using nice big shrimp. Now, take a look at this bread and see how she's doing. This is not quite as brown as it should be. Mine was just going to saute enough for you to get the idea, but you want to keep your eye right on it, because they can brown awfully fast. So I'm going to take these out, and I'll show you how they're supposed to look. Just like that. You see, just lightly brown. And then when they're done, you take them out and let them drain on paper towels, and then you can heat them up in the oven just before you're ready to do them. You'll find that they're just delicious. They are very crisp and nice and have a lovely flavor. And now, after that, we have the shrimps, which go into the pan. And these, I'm just going to saute right in the olive oil. We'll turn that down a little bit. I think actually this is one of the nicest ways to cook shrimps. Because you don't need to, and you can cook them right from their frozen state. And put a little bit of wine or dry white vermouth in. I use either white wine or dry white vermouth. And I think if you can't get the right kind of white wine, and you've got to test it out yourself and try them all, it's supposed to be dry, and it's not supposed to have any, as they call, a foxy or over-pronounced taste. And if you can't find the right kind of white wine that's reasonable, use a good dry French vermouth. And then there are the shrimps, and that only just takes a few minutes. And then into the pan go the chopped mushroom stems and the tomatoes. And we have to also have some garlic. And I'm going to put them in with the garlic press. About 1.5 to 2 cups of tomatoes there. But I really think the fresh tomatoes, I much prefer. I think if you use the too much canned tomato or tomato puree, you get too strong a taste, and it's not supposed to be a strong Italianesque taste. It's a French taste. A little tiny bit more of this Italian seasoning and some salt. It's always best to season each element as you do it. And then these should cook. I think they should cook covered for 4 or 5 minutes to get for the tomato juice to exude. And then as soon as the tomato juice is exuded, you take the cover off the pan and let them cook for about 10 minutes longer until the tomatoes are soft and the juice is practically all evaporated. So I'm going to put these off to the side. Now we have the fluted mushrooms, which are to cook in a separate pan. And they go with some butter and a little white wine and some salt. And you can use the little white wine because they need a little bit of acid to keep them white. And in they go, and they just simmer for about 4 or 5 minutes, just until they're soft. If you cook them too much or too fast, they begin to flatten out, and rather than having a look like that, they spread out like a flat umbrella. And then they get covered, and when they're done, they look just like that, the mushrooms. See, they're not overcooked. I'll put these over here. Now we have one of the stranger and more interesting elements, which are French fried eggs. I think I've got a little bit too much oil in there. And this is, again, olive oil. And this is hot olive oil, and they're going to poach in the oil rather than in water. Now, you break the egg, and then in it goes into the olive oil, and you turn it around. Now this sounds like an odd way to do eggs, but you're going to find that it's very good. It's different and unusual. Now, I'll get this. You'll have to get a slotted spoon. It just takes about 2 minutes. And then you let it drain on paper towels. I'm going to do another one there so you can see how it works. If you have really very fresh farm fresh eggs, just like, I'm going to drop one right in and see how that seems to work really just about as well. But the fresher the egg, the neater and nicer it's going to look. just like egg poached in water. It's going to look, woo, look at that big balloon. Now, that one did not turn out very well. I'm just showing you some of the perils of cooking for the emperor. I will do one more. And that could be just a little bit hotter. And by pushing it around with the spoon, that helps form it up. It's very hard to get a spoon that things won't stick on. There. That's a little better. That will cover my shame for the other one. Now, when your chicken is done, it is, get some of these things out of the way here. You feel it, and when you poke it, the juices run clear, and when you press it, the chicken feels tender. And then you take the chicken out and put your tomato sauce in and boil that down. And I think this is one of the very important things, is, I don't seem to be doing this very fast, in cooking, of taking out the chicken and looking and seeing now if the sauce needs degreasing, taking out extra oil and so forth. And if you tried to make the sauce with the chicken, then you wouldn't be able to do this little final bit of degreasing, which is all very important. And then your tomato sauce is ready and is thickened. Then that goes in, and you want to be sure that that is absolutely delicious in every respect. And the chicken goes back in, and then you baste it with the sauce, and then taste it. And it just has to be absolutely lovely. Which it is. It's a very, very nice dish. And this you can do to some extent ahead. You just want to make very sure that you don't overcook the chicken. As long as you can keep it warm, certainly for half an hour. But if you let it completely cool off and then reheat it, you're not going to have the same lovely taste of freshly cooked chicken, because a sauté is not like a fricassee. So that is all ready to serve. And here we go. Let's clear the decks here. And we have a serving platter and the croutons and the eggs, and I've got the mushrooms, and we have olives and parsley and shrimps. And the chicken goes onto the platter. A neat dump, as we would say. Basting the pieces a little bit with the sauce so it's nicely distributed around. And then 8 croutons. This is going to serve 4 people. I've got about 10 pieces of chicken here. There's 8 croutons. And then we have our fried eggs. Where's my spoon? Here. And then an egg on every other crouton. You're going to find this odd at first. I thought it was odd when we first heard of this dish, to have this kind of eggs with the chicken, but you'll find that it's just delicious with the sauce. It's just a very good idea. So this chef was very well worth celebrating. And then 3 shrimps apiece, or if you had whole écrevisses, they would be rampant, sticking with their heads out like that over the plate and their claws rampant. There we have the shrimps, and then we have olives. Karam, the great chef, of course, put truffles on, but truffles are not in season in June, which is the date of the Battle of Marengo. And there go the fluted mushrooms and just a little bit of parsley on each egg for color. Now, I think that's a very pretty arrangement. I think Napoleon was a lucky chap to have such a good dinner. And we are ready to serve this chicken Marengo. Now, because this isn't terribly big chicken, I'm going to give everybody 2 pieces to start with. Then they'll have 1 piece for second helpings. A little bit of sauce over everything. And I want you to, oh, and I forgot the shrimps. There. Now I want you to see how this egg is. Now the egg is, see, it's still soft. And so that mixing with the sauce is absolutely lovely, and you wouldn't think so. It's like drinking sauterne with oysters, which we once tried, and it's delicious. And these are little tiny fresh peas, the kind that they have in Italy in June. So I think that is that's a very nice combination. Nobody really knows what Napoleon has. You have to make it up to some extent. And then as for wine, you could serve a red Bordeaux, but I think the best wine, the most honorable one, is one of the great white Burgundies, Croutons Charlemagne, from one emperor to another. So isn't that really great fun to eat a dish with a history like this one? You'll never forget the Battle of Marengo after you've eaten this chicken. So how about a Poulet Saute Marengo? That's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appétit.
This program was
Why not put the new WGBH Home and Garden Club on your favorite recipe list? Imagine meeting with the production staff of The French Chef, attending pre-broadcast screenings, and lots more. Call 617-492-9254. 492-9254. Make the brand new WGBH Home and Garden Club a family favorite.